Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson. Joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Matthew Mancini. We warmly welcome the family of Lieutenant Colonel John Charles Robertson, whose story will be told shortly. We warmly welcome Colonel Joe Johnson, retired, and Mr Nigel Webster, and members of the ACT's Reserve Forces Day Council. Mr Mark Rigotti, CEO of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. We would also like to welcome those who have joined us today to commemorate Reserve Forces Day, which recognises the service and achievements of the Reserve Forces of the Australian Defence Force. And we are honoured to acknowledge both former and current serving members of our Reserve Forces, and thank you for your service. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Wynnum State High School, Wynnum, Queensland. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Colonel John Charles Robertson. John Robertson was born on the 28th of October 1894 in Geelong. Known as Jack, he was the eldest of 5 children born to George and Jessie Robertson. The family remained in Geelong throughout Jack's childhood, and he likely attended Newton Primary School before moving to Geelong College. He was a strong student, attaining prizes in geometry, Latin and French. Robertson found work at Hawkes Brothers Hardware and General Merchants in Geelong. He then worked as an invoice and ledger clerk for his late great-grandfather's company, while undertaking a carpentry and joinery course at Gordon College of Technology and studying bookkeeping and accountancy at night. Robertson joined the senior cadets in 1911 and was promoted to sergeant in December that year. Although he undertook further examination for entry into the Citizens Forces in April 1912, he was exempted from training for 3 months due to an unspecified illness. Robertson was promoted to sergeant in the Citizen Forces in February 1913 and then colour sergeant in August 1913. Robertson was awarded a commission in May 1914 and was appointed lieutenant in July 1915. Robertson enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 23rd of July 1915. As he was under the age of 23, he was required to enlist as a private rather than in his previous rank of lieutenant. He was promoted to acting sergeant before departing Australia with reinforcements of the 23rd Battalion in February 1916. Robertson served with the 23rd Australian Infantry Battalion, 6th Australian Light Trench Mortar Battery, an Australian Corps School in France and Belgium, and in November 1917 was awarded the Military Cross for conspicuous gallantry and devotion to duty while managing his section under heavy German fire. He returned to Australia on the 20th of December 1918 and was discharged from the Australian Imperial Force in May 1920. After the First World War, Robertson returned to working for his grandfather's company as an orders manager and buyer. He also maintained his role in the militia forces. Robertson married his longtime sweetheart, Dot Aikman, in September 1922. The couple moved to their newly built house at Newton, where 3 children were born to the couple: Jock in 1923, Cargill in 1925, and Margaret in 1928. Robertson's left his grandfather's struggling company in the late 1920s or early 1930s and was forced to move with the family to Belmont to save money. He took on a variety of jobs, heaving wool, driving an ice truck, and finally selling wood for fuel. In his spare time, Robertson was an active supporter of the Geelong Legacy Club, the Chilwell State School, Chilwell Free Library, the Geelong branch of the 23rd Battalion Association, St David's Presbyterian Church, and the local Alba Social Club's charity work. Robertson continued to serve with the 23rd Battalion in the city of Geelong throughout the 1930s and was awarded the Victoria Decoration for his service. He was promoted to Major in April 1935, and by the time war broke out again in 1939, he was second in command of the composite 23rd, 21st Geelong Battalion. At the age of 46, Robertson formally enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 29th of October 1940. He was appointed Lieutenant Colonel on the 7th of November 1940 and placed in command of the newly formed 2nd 29th Battalion. The battalion completed its initials training at Bonegilla in northwestern Victoria before spending 5 months training at Bathurst. Robertson was hospitalised multiple times for various illnesses. He wrote home to Dot frequently, keeping her updated as best he could on his health and feelings. The battalion joined the rest of the 27th Brigade, departing Australia at the end of July 1941, arriving in Singapore in mid-August. From Singapore, the battalion travelled to Segament in Malaya, where it continued training. Robertson was granted a week of leave from late October to early November before returning to continue training his battalion. It would soon be required to put what it had learned into practice. Japanese forces landed in Thailand and northern Malaya just after midnight on the 8th of December, and quickly swept through the Malay Peninsula. By the 15th of January, the Japanese forces had reached the Mao River in Johor, towards the southern end of the Malay Peninsula. The area was defended by an inexperienced Indian brigade, and so the 2nd 19th and the 2nd 29th Battalions were sent to Mao to provide reinforcements. Robertson was a prolific writer, frequently sending letters home to his family in Australia. On the 15th of January 1942, Robertson wrote home to Dory and family, reassuring them of his health and expressing his wish to be reunited with them soon. He wrote, "I do long to be home with you all. Sounds for unsoldier-like, but it is a fact. Love and kisses to all. Keep believing and don't worry." The 2nd 29th Battalion reached nearby Bakri on the 17th of January and assumed defensive positions. At 6:45 a.m. the next morning, the Japanese forces launched an attack. The fighting was fierce, but the battalion and accompanying 2nd 4th Anti-Tank Regiment managed to destroy several Japanese tanks, and over the course of the day, the Japanese forces gradually surrounding the 2nd 29th, though the 2nd 19th Battalion managed to push through to reach Bakri. Just before 11 a.m, Robertson was travelling from brigade headquarters on a motorcycle driven by dispatch rider Sergeant Sid Buckham when they were fired upon by a platoon of Japanese troopers. Both men were hit. Sergeant Buckman managed to continue riding despite being wounded in his left arm, but Robertson fell off the back of the motorbike a few hundred yards from the brigade headquarters. Robertson was rescued from his position and brought back to the headquarters, where it was revealed he had been hit by at least one bullet in his leg and was suffering a head injury and shock after falling from the bike. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Robertson died shortly after reaching brigade headquarters. He was 47 years old. Robertson's remains were buried in Kranji War Cemetery in Singapore, and after the war, a Commonwealth War Grave headstone was erected over his grave, bearing the personal inscription selected by his grieving family back home, "Dearly loved." His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour to my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Colonel John Charles Robertson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. we leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post-ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.